Good evening, everyone, and welcome back, or welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My unparalleled co-host is Laura Blackwell, and I hope that you're all healthy and safe and taking care of yourselves and your loved ones. I started Story Hour during the early throes of the pandemic, the peak of lockdown, and my intention at that time was just to create a space where my writer friends and I could just get together once a week and share our work with each other. And I was thinking like really a pretty small circle of folks just meeting every week. And it has gone so far beyond that. It's just unbelievable. So I really appreciate my partner in crime, Laura Blackwell, for her collaboration in making this happen week in, week out, year in, year out. For 3.5 years now. So the way this works is pretty simple. I like to think of this as sort of an ancient and time-honored form of entertainment, which is people sitting around the fire telling lies to each other. I can imagine a couple of our ancestors huddled against the dark in the flickering light. And one says to her friend, gathering, and I came upon a huge long tooth, the biggest I've ever seen. It looked like it wanted to eat me. And so I shouted at it, so Bob nods, says, "I'm tooth, though." I threw a rock at it, and it turned into a raven and flew away. And so thus was speculative fiction born. So many millennia later, here we are every week. We have two authors, about 30 minutes each, doing exactly that. Tonight, we're really delighted to welcome Kathleen Jennings and Nancy Jane Moore. I am really happy to announce that we have received a SIFWA Givers Grant for 2023 so that we can continue to keep the lights on and these virtual rooms open so that we can continue to bring you what we feel is pretty much the best in spoken word speculative fiction you can get anywhere. Before we go on to authors' recommendations, we'd also like to call your attention to how you can support the writers in the front lines of the WGA and the SAG-AFTRA strike. The Entertainment Community Fund, founded in 1882, if you can believe that, offers a broad spectrum of programs, workshops, support groups, online resources, and especially pertinent now, emergency financial assistance to support the unique essential needs of everybody who works in performing arts and entertainment. So that's entertainmentcommunity.org. So check it out. And if you can give, please do so. It's also our custom here at Story Hour to ask our authors to indicate a worthy cause for us to call your attention to. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to help to do that, if you're not, just to be aware, spread the word if you're so inclined. Kathleen Jennings is reading tonight for the Rural Fire Brigades Association of Queensland, rbfaq.org. This is the Queensland Association that leads and represents the interests of the over 1,400 plus brigades and over 28,000 volunteer brigade members in Queensland. That's phenomenal. So in addition to actively providing funding to brigades through the grants program, they pursue issues and projects of relevance to brigades and volunteers. So our FBAQ is committed to ensuring that the wider community recognizes the level of professionalism, commitment, service, as well as the social and economic contribution that's made by the brigades and the volunteers. That's rbfaq.org. Nancy Jane Moore is reading tonight for the Sustainable Economies Law Center, theslc.org. Sustainable Economies Law Center cultivates a new legal landscape that supports community resilience and grassroots economic empowerment. We provide essential legal tools. They provide essential legal tools, education, research, advice, and advocacy so that communities everywhere can develop their own sustainable sources of food, housing, energy, jobs, and other vital aspects of a thriving community. So that's the SELC.org. Please check both of those organizations, and if you can, contribute. We're going to start the program tonight with Kathleen Jennings. Kathleen Jennings is an illustrator and writer based in Brisbane, Australia. As an illustrator, she has won one World Fantasy Award and been a finalist 3 times, and has been shortlisted once for the Hugos, once for the Locus, as well as winning a number of Ditmars. Yahoo! As a writer, she has won a British Fantasy Award, the Sidney J. Bounds Award, and 2 Ditmars, have been shortlisted for World Fantasy Awards, the Courier Mail People's Choice Book of the Year Award, a Crawford Award, the Australian Shadows Award, and the Yugi Foster Memorial Award, and several Aurealis Awards. So Kathleen, we're so happy to have you here. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The story I'm going to begin by reading is The Present Only Toucheth Thee, which was first published in Strange Horizons, but is coming out in my first short story collection, Kindling, from Small Bear Press in January. Thank you. If you have a cover to flash, you're welcome to do that. I do not have it in my hands yet, but looks great. Just so that you're aware, there are some allusions to deaths of everybody, including children and animals in this story, just so that you're aware. And all 3 stories touch on ghosts and therefore death. The present only toucheth thee. You have been following me from almost the beginning. Seed black eyes, thread-fine whiskers, delicate claws that prickle and scrape, darting and hiding on your quest across the unswept concrete. I have found a rusted trap and will welcome your company while I repair it. But you pay it no heed. Does it puzzle you? Amuse you? Your course is set towards not me, but my book. That is how I know it is you. Mortality was never my besetting weakness, but here are some creatures you have been. A doe, milk white, grazing near my cave one evening. Your hide would become the cover of this book. A lamb, incautious, of whose skin I made the first parchment page. The pine which fell before the doe was born, whose rosin yielded soot for my ink. 3 lives, single-souled, to supply my pen. Although I have forgotten the language I wrote in, I can guess the meaning, for what does any man write except, I am here? The coincidence that calls you back life after life to the book is also the power that makes its words true. The words shimmer and act, the letters ripple and be. But what do you want with it, little one? I have beaten you and killed you one plague year when you were a rat. Much, much later, when the secrets of disease were unlocked, I amused myself by imagining you became after that a flea, and after that a fleck of the plague itself. In another half-emptied city, you were a thief, fumbling from hunger, only your soul carrying you forward. Justice was swift there. I had you hanged. There were times when you were long absent, although I suspect you were once a convolvulus spiraling towards my many-paned window. You have certainly been a spider in a city of sun-baked brick that is now lost to time. A little long-legged peace lover, webbing and winding the book when you thought I did not notice. You were too small to even lift the cover, and so I let you linger, unthreatening company, as concerned with the book as I. When you died, curled in your strands, I almost mourned. 20 years later, when you were a handsome youth with gold on your upper arms and wrists and royal scarlet daringly woven through your robes, they bore you on a litter to my door and you entered with wide, acquisitive eyes. I imagined that you remembered the taste of mites and moths, that your scarlet lips were still powdery with their wings. You offered me much for the book when you saw it. You recognized rarity and power, I think. You certainly knew bloodshed. I can only conjecture, you see, what it will mean for you if you take my book, or for me if I lose it. I have written my long life in those pages, on skins I suspect you have worn, and on others no doubt innocent. Since first I guessed its tripled power. It has sustained me when I have been pursued and threatened, when lesser men would have surrendered. Were you also the rabbit I boiled into glue? What are the flax that became the thread that stitched the pages, the reed that formed my pen? I have tried to make another such book, but there are more souls in the world now. How am I to find anyone twice except you who are bound to me, you who remain undiminished, one of the first? When you were a general raising villagers and I fled with the book strapped beneath my clothes, I was curious. Had you begun to remember the secret that I whispered into the dying mouth of that arrogant lad? Or did you rage because you were crowded now by thin, diluted souls, you who had been almost solitary in the youth of the world? Once, for a time, you recurred in the children of a new factory town. Starved or work-mutilated or too richly dressed, always you found your way to my door, and always your eyes lit on that book. Each child, 9 or 7 or 5, was of an age to have come into being on the death of the last whose body was buried under my floor. Why that loop? Were children any cheaper then than they have ever been? Or had the pattern become familiar to you? I also have a rare soul and an old one. When the world grew overfull, I moved up among mountains, intending to watch them erode to their ancestral bones. It took several lives for you to find me there, and I wondered if you were crossing the ocean to me on ships that plunged down to a darkness so undisturbed that it remembered you. Or were you ascending from the plains in a train that choked on its own smoke in a long tunnel so that you died as peaceful as sleeping? There was a young woman with a camera. Climbing high, she found my hut. It was 70 years before the retreating glacier released her body. For some of that time you were an eagle, clear-eyed, but even when the great windstorms destroyed my shelter, I kept the book under a stone. Would we have ever ended? If I had not written you into my life, would you have spread like dye through the clouded pool of history? Or if I had not bound my existence to yours, would I have died and lived as others do, diminishing, always seeking an immortality I surrendered in the first youth of the world? We loved each other once, until you took the key I forbade you. If there are others like either of us, they are too knotted in their own stories, their own repeating secrets for me to find them. The Methuselah trees have fallen to storms or smoke, and the ancient sea sponges are passing. There is a great lizard I have seen more than once, but perhaps it is merely old. Some sharks I have heard circulate in the currents for centuries. Who knows what they have learned? And I am told the cockroaches will outlive everything else, take the lean, lost souls remaining into their number, and inherit the earth. Even now, as I bait this trap with food from my own plate, I am certain of this. When the waters rise and the sun burns hot and close, I will ask myself whether I have seen the last of you. Yet what if we survive that as well, and the world freezes like hate? Suppose when you wade through ashen snow and find me, this book remains the only thing left to burn. When ice brittles the water and the sky and my breath is frost, you will come to me in your final body. You will curl at my foot or alight at my elbow or stand over me and mean or even say, "This time set us both free. Let us warm our hands a little at the pyre of all that has ever been, the lives I had and the lives you refused, and rest." Thank you. I usually write quite long stories, so I've queued up 3 tiny little ones for this reading. Three if there's time left for the tiniest one. The next story is on the origins of the population of Wakeford, which came out in the Sunday Morning Transport last year. Greenfall Guest House, as it is now called, has rested on a hill above Wakeford almost as long as that town has existed. We do not, in fact, know which was founded first. Ever since the house's upper windows were first set into the walls, years before we knew ourselves, we have crowded against the uneven glass and sensed the thin curled smoke of the little town, the fool's gold glitter of the wake running below it. When the intervening branches are bare as a veil, we can make out the old ford, the new bridge, and the bridges that came after it, beads on a string. By night, there are sometimes bonfires below, sometimes bells. More often, there is only a yew-dark peace, gravely quiet beneath the stars. From Wakeford, trees wash in waves up the slope toward Greenfall House. They roof the steep and seldom travelled road, beech and oak and ash striding with holly and nettles about their knees. And as the hill rises, clusters of pines standing in their still pools of rust-red needles. There have been times when the hills were cleared and times when they were planted, but lately the woods have been left to grow. Only we, watching from above, and an occasional startled rambler following very old paths indeed, can point out the straggled line of cherry trees from a long overgrown orchard, or the unstable cairn of a covered well, or the mossy marker of a grave far from the boundary of any known churchyard. To newcomers approaching Greenfall, this wall of leaves must look as if it has grown there since the beginning of the world. But here at Greenfall, the woods are drawn into runnels and labyrinths and diverted around its neat green yard. This has lately become a small lawn, although for long years it has been gardens and more than once a marshalling point. Now silver splintering deck chairs recline on the cropped turf, supporting visitors whose faces change like shuffled cards. When they are absent, the ragged cat sleeps there, but it always wears its own face. We cannot leave the building, but we look down on the grass which in daylight is flounced with blousy ginger hens. The hedges are filled seasonally with irises or ice. More than once, brief as a falling star, there has been a tattered peacock seeking refuge from a greater house, finding solitary solace in a scream like empty halls. At night, crisp with moonlight, the lawn becomes as much a road as that to Wakeford, although rather busier. Its nocturnal traffic is soft-footed and able to see better in the dark. If we creep to the other side of Greenfall House, we can see the fierce upswelling of the earth. The road falters out in sight of the house. The trees thin and give way to bracken and gorse and stone. That is sheep-haunted country, and no one has lived there at all for so very, very long that even we cannot quite imagine their cold clustered dwellings. So it is mostly the town of Wakeford, small as a toy, that we study through the glass. But it is only Greenfall House that we understand. Who we were before Greenfall, we cannot tell. Perhaps we have been here so long that we have forgotten. Perhaps we were the first guests, or maybe we are pieced together from a dozen souls, and our memories are a kaleidoscope like dawn through a cobweb. But although we do not remember us, there are things we do know: to curl in the sun when it falls through a window, to suck the sweet sugar breath of withering books, the violence of pepper, salt, which was life, the shriek of branches grating like teeth in lonely winds. The house is high, and in winter the short, steep road to Wakeford resists wheels and could shatter bones, if we had them, if we could leave, if we had will enough to wish to. For we think we know, that Greenfall was built to collect, to shelter, to contain us. Its architects worked by instinct, generation after generation, feeling their way to a building that functioned as a whole, and only better with each change. The first long, low farmhouse with its walls thick as cream, and the sombre half-timbered floors above it, the newest, thinnest walls above those, and the wings of red brick outstretched towards the grey farm buildings, are all one machine. One engine, summoning us, straining us out of the air, condensing us into a watchfulness, a faint weight settling on the edge of a bed, one thought glancing across another's. The dormer windows, the twisted pots and the oldest remaining chimneys are funnels. The conservatory, newest addition, distills light. The long parquetry hall sings and chirps so easily that even a question unasked can set it gossiping. We do not know how long ago we arrived. We might have been laid up for centuries like old gowns in lavender, or laid down like wine, like paper, like felt. We have been compounded in chests and linen presses until the fibres of our non-existence have interlocked, and we have begun to wake together and to weave ourselves into ourselves and time and Greenfall. We have pressed our cheeks against the households at dinner in the little dining room and draped our arms over those of their guests in the large breakfast room, just to feel the rise and fall of knife and cup, the convulsion of throat, the flutter of eyelids. We have modelled our jaws, measured our hands against theirs on pipe, on glass, on piano, on pillow, all unseen. And the cat, rough-coated Roma, acts as if nothing is amiss. But the dogs, shaggy sheepdogs at times, at others slow mastiffs, presently two nervous fawn-coloured hounds, slim as whispers, have taken to skittering ahead of us in the passages. In the kitchen, with its long range, which gives and gives warmth as no human can, for we have tried holding them close in the night until they have no heat to spare, the dogs curl together in the wing-back chair and pull up their thin legs and whimper when we pass by. And, thus noticed, we gradually form into ourselves. The whirling hours begin a little to steady to a pace a mind can measure. Words sifted between floorboards are ours to claim. Blood from a nicked finger on a cutting board is ours to glean. Crumbs and buttons and snipped threads, shed hair and nipped fingernails are our games, our puzzles. We can almost move them. We can drive them into shapes that mean we are here, Here, and not altogether alone. There are presences like us, not us. But these are later comers, spidering up from the basement, fished silvery out of the seepage of an overbuilt spring. They slink in from the outbuildings where they have been carried on boot soles or burred in the fleece of pinch-faced sheep. These are dust-tumbled things, still reaching out for others up whom to climb, for a force, however slight, with which to join. But we, their elders, are becoming. We are remarked by the house, by perhaps its changing visitors, its caretakers, to whose faces, worn smooth as they are passed down through generations, we have grown accustomed. See, there is a draught that diverts tentatively around our feet, light steams curling on the wall, having shone through the nebulous prisms of our bodies. One day a smooth hinged door yields to the pressure, soft, insistent of our hand. And the opaque living, the family, the guests who stain the air with their slow movements pause when we enter a room, hesitate now when we touch their hands. They haunt the hallways with the hollow sounds of names, as if they expect to see one of themselves caught rippling from the corner of their eye. We have measured ourselves so exactly against them. And for a moment, we fear we have been too exact. Our long, transparent history unspools like the chain of the tall clock in the hall. Weight fills us like water dripping into a glass, like milk into water. We are growing translucent. If we press what are almost ears to plaster, lathe, wallpaper, we can still hear our juniors squeaking and scrabbling in the dust among the rat nests, in the hearts of the thin, needle-clawed body mummified beneath the first hearthstone. But those old comforting dens, the hidden paths of wainscot and underfloor, are closed to us. And the rippling draughts are cold on our limbs and our naked bellies, on our napes as yet unwarmed by newly sprouting hair. We lap at bowls, we crumble the bread, we smear the butter, we fumble and break the eggs and hide until the blame can fall elsewhere. Fugitives where once we were at home, we stay always one room ahead of the lumbering living, barely ahead, for their pace is quickening to ours. Their voices blur into meanings. Their attention, their almost knowing, is crowding us out. Their laughter is dusty with whiskey and ginger wine when they say, "Down at the Ring of Bells, I heard a story about this house," or "This afternoon, in full sunlight in the library, I thought I saw..." We slink into closets, creep like moths into wool and tweed and denim. We borrow faces sunk in mirrors. We hope to pass unfound. But Greenfall, once all our world, is grown too small to hide us. Their footsteps are massed and thundering on the stairs, in the corridors, and we are only a room ahead, scrambling over and under the old bedsteads, darting through swinging doors we cannot yet manage to latch, breaking through into the old nursery. That door we had forgotten was newly papered over, though not so recently that they knew the chamber existed. A moment's reprieve. We have lost our pursuers, to a cobwebbed rocking horse, to the hollow dolls, the soft dust marked only by a cat's paw prints. All the chittering nameless ghosts are clamoring behind the walls. We will steal a name from a framed sampler. We're forgetting how once that pinprick of blood on the thread was fresh. From a book left fluttering open on a side table. We steal shoes for our feet and air for our voices. But hope and heart we take from a view through the window on the landing, through shadows, our shadows, on the night-lit glass of the town darkening into sleep, and a little shroud of mist rising from the wake. A following shout, no louder or foggier than our own new voices. But we have the advantage, for we know where we are going. Down the stairs, through the hallway, while the cat blinks on the windowsill and the dogs wail and cower. Before we remember glass and wood no longer let us pass, we set the hands of the hall clock spinning as merrily as they did when it was new. We have overturned the hat stand, spilling walking coats and hiking sticks. We have started the library fire dancing. The radio, oh, once we thought it was a thing like us, crackles its frenzy. The atmosphere is sharp with wine and sweet with cheese. But ahead are the folding windows, unlocked, well-oiled. For the first time since we have been ourselves, we stand with only the night between us and the down tumble of the land. And now we are fleeing Greenfall, out onto the little terrace still warm from the vanished sun. We are leaping off the edge of it hand in hand, merry as cherry trees. We are racing down the long ladder of spilled light, and the dogs, come late to courage, gallop joyous behind us. But we plunge into the basin of evening drowned grass. We thread the pine dark maze with the effortlessness of foxes. And laughing, we run to Wakeford, on, down the blue and owl-embroidered night. Thank you. And I think I have 2 minutes left for the very tiniest sliver of a story. This is a story on its own. It will form part of a larger project that will be announced next year, but this is a tiny complete story from within it. It has no title yet. When my wife's grandfather, says our old neighbour, was a girl on the other side of the world, no one dared leave a dish of water uncovered to the night, for the mirrored moon was a door. As for what could slip through it, a few said it had long spidery legs or was an impossibly handsome man. Others claimed it was both at once. My wife's grandmother said her grandmother was either lazy or enterprising. She put a basin in her window one full night and caught herself a husband. But she was cleverer than kind. He begged to leave, promised to return with pearls and white gold. She wouldn't tell him the way. She emptied bowls at evening, threw pebbles at reflections in the stream. But running water holds its own dangers. Green and mossy beings, annoyed, reached dripping hands to her husband. They told him that in stagnant pools or when water slid in a pure flow over a stone, the moon slipped aside as if something waited behind it. The next full moon, she woke to a splash and found on the threshold a pail of water, rippling as if a stone had fallen in. She never saw her husband again. My wife's grandmother said it was just a tale. After all, there are many ways to find and lose a spouse. But she warned us not to throw stones into running water, for who knows what bad luck that might bring. And that was the last of the tales. Thank you all. So the third one was unnamed and will be in a project that will be announced in a little bit. The second one was on the origins of the population of Wakeford and is in Sunday Morning Transport. And the first was The Present Only Toucheth Thee, and it will be coming out in Kindling from Small Beer Press next January, and was also in Strange Horizons.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Lovely work. And I could just listen to the sound of your voice reading forever. So thank you so much. It is our custom between authors to just pause for a moment and be silent, let the work resonate a bit before we move on to the next part of the program. So we're going to do exactly that for just a moment. All right, Kathleen Jennings, everybody. Thank you so much. Nancy Jane Moore is the author of the fantasy novel For the Good of the Realm, the science fiction novel The Weave, and the novella Changeling, all from Aqueduct Press. Her short fiction has appeared in a number of anthologies and magazines, and in a collection from PS Publishing. She holds a 4th degree black belt in Aikido. In other lifetimes, she has organized co-ops, practiced law, and worked as a legal editor. A native Anglo-Texan, she lived in Washington, D.C. for many years and now lives with her sweetheart in Oakland, California, which makes us neighbors. Over the last few years, she has developed good relationships with her neighborhood crows. She is currently working on a sequel to For the Good of the Realm. Nancy Jane Moore, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. As Dan said, I am working on a sequel to For the Good of the Realm, and I'm kind of slow. So instead of reading something new, I'm reading something that is over 20 years old. And the story is called 3 o'clock in the morning. I believe I wrote it in about the year 2000 because it first came out in Lady Churchill's Rosebud Wristlet in 2001. And so it was written before a lot of things happened that gave me sort of jaundiced attitude about the world. But it was later in this collection, Conscientious Inconsistencies from PS Publishing, which is out of print, I fear. So when I started thinking about what to read, I went back to read some of my old work, and you know, that's complicated. I mean, sometimes you look at your old work and you think, oh, I could have done that so much better now than I did 20 years ago. And sometimes the story just feels dated. And that's really a problem, of course, with science fiction. But when I looked at this story for the first time in several years, I got the third reaction, the one I really cherish, which is, oh my God, I wrote that? That's really good. It's an amazing story. I still love this story. So I'm very much still as proud of the story as I was when it first came out. And more to the point of sharing it for this event, it sounds to me so current, I feel like I could have written it last week, which means it's not a terribly cheerful story. But I don't think it has, there's only a small bit of death on the page, and it's not obvious. So I will just warn you that it's not cheerful. So 3 o'clock in the morning. You wake up in the middle of the night and reach out to touch your husband, but feel only mattress. The sound of police sirens jolts you completely awake. Then you hear, louder than the sirens, the sound of a sultry voice promising callers the woman of their dreams for only $3.95 a minute. Your husband has fallen asleep in the living room with the TV on. You're not sure what woke you up. Light from the corner street light filters around the edges of the blinds. You can see the outlines of your furniture, the fake teak dressers, the bookcase full of Gothic romances. Nothing different. You were dreaming, but you don't remember what about. What you do remember is that you didn't finish that report for work on the percentage of insurance claims correctly filed. You're hoping to get in early to do it. You switch on the radio. The soothing voice of a BBC announcer tells you about genocide somewhere in Africa. You fall back asleep. When you next wake up, sunlight is peeking in. It's 7:15. You've overslept. You put on your robe, hurry to the kitchen to make coffee. Your husband is still lying in his brown Naugahyde recliner, half awake, watching the news. His pants are unbuttoned, and he's rotating his head as if he has a crick in his neck. On the TV, a perky young woman with short blonde hair says, "In local news, a wall appeared in the middle of town last night." The screen fills with a great expanse of concrete. A reporter stands next to it, talking into a microphone. The wall extends way above his head. He says, "The wall appeared sometime between 2 and 4 this morning." You know the wall going up woke you at 3 a.m. Though that makes no sense. The wall is a long way from your house. It runs along the train tracks that divide the right side of town from the wrong side. Your husband says, "Good idea. We don't need their kind." He sits up abruptly, exits the chair, and goes and parks himself in the bathroom. You don't get to take a shower until 7:45, so you leave late, hit a traffic snarl, and get to work after 9. A crisis has just occurred. The senior executive vice president for cost reduction needs to know why your department is using 3.2% more supplies than the other claims review departments. You join in to help the office clerk document that no supplies are wasted, which makes you forget about your report until almost noon when your boss asks for it. So you skip lunch to finish it. A woman in purchasing lives on the other side of the wall and didn't show up. No one talks about this. On your way home, the radio announcer says, in a hearty voice, "Local authorities report there's no way across over the wall. In sports, the hometown boys lose another one, and we're going to have some rain tonight." You want to watch the news, but your husband is watching a rerun of a sitcom in which madcap young people sharing an impossibly chic apartment talk about sex nonstop but never do it. During the commercials, he clicks through the other channels at a rapid rate, only stopping for a moment when buxom but otherwise skinny blondes in bathing suits show up on the screen. You serve dinner in front of the TV and sit there watching a game show in which all the questions are about television programs. Even though you know all the answers, you don't call them out. Finally, you go to bed and wake up again at 3 a.m. You change the radio over to local news and listen for 15 minutes before they tell you anything about the wall. It's moved. It's closer to your house. The next day, more people don't show up for work. You stare at your computer and try to concentrate on looking for the mistakes in the insurance claims in front of you. It's hard to settle down to work. You email a coworker across the room to ask what she has heard about the walls. When a reply comes, it's from Human Resources, reminding you not to use email for personal purposes. The day after, two are missing from your department, and your boss gives a speech about everyone needing to do a little extra during the crisis. He assigns you another region. You stay late, and when you get home, your husband has ordered pizza and eaten it all. You eat cold cereal. When you wake at 3 the next morning, your heart is beating very fast. Your husband is not in bed, but you can hear the television. You'd like company, but you just lie there, feeling your heart bumping along. You don't want to know what happened, so you just turn on the BBC. Only they're talking about walls popping up everywhere, and suddenly they don't sound so soothing. Rioters are burning an American embassy somewhere in the Middle East. The British Prime Minister is expressing grave concern. The Secretary General of the United Nations is calling a special meeting of the Security Council. You switch it off and just lie there in the dark. The perky blonde on the morning news tells you the latest, a second wall on the other side of town. This one separates you from the more affluent. Your husband says, "Good riddance. We don't need them hoity-toity types." More people do not come to work. Your boss assigns you yet another region. Today you stay 2 hours late. You wonder why you must do so much when many of the people whose claims you review are on the other side of the wall. But you don't complain. 2 days later, you come home to find your husband sprawled in the recliner, a pile of beer cans tumbled beside the chair. He tried to go to work, but ran into a wall. You try to sober him up, cook him a nice dinner of fried chicken and mashed potatoes. But halfway through, he gets up and slams out the door. Comes back 15 minutes later with a big bag of tortilla chips and a 6-pack of the new dry light beer you keep seeing commercials for. You would like to comfort him, but you don't know how anymore. You wonder if he feels the same way or if he really just doesn't care. The Hardy News guy tells you the next day that new walls have cropped up running the other directions. Authorities speculate that some parts of town look like a big checkerboard, he says, and his co-host gives the perfunctory laugh. You know one morning when you wake up at 3 a.m. that a wall is now between you and work. You wonder if other people wake up when the walls go up. You haven't heard anything about this on the news. You get up and dress anyway. Your husband is still snoring in the recliner when you leave. You drive down the street until you run into a wall. This is the first time you've actually seen one. From the TV pictures, you expect it to be smooth, but it's rough, barely finished concrete. You notice a man trying to climb it, using the rough parts for hand and toe holds, but he loses his balance and falls hard to the ground. He lies there a few minutes, then crawls to his feet and starts back up. You leave before he falls again. Your husband is drinking his breakfast, watching the morning talk shows. They aren't saying anything about walls. Another perky blonde is interviewing the author of a diet book that allows you to eat all the beef you want, but doesn't let you eat any chicken or fish or vegetables. The perky blonde swears by it, says she lost 15 pounds. You start to clean. Scrub the grout between the bathroom tiles with an old toothbrush. Wash the baseboards. Get on a step stool and wipe the top of the refrigerator clean. Vacuum until your husband yells at you that the noise is interfering with the TV. The next day you work in the yard. Cut the grass even though it's only 3 days since you last cut it. Weed the flower bed. Dig a hole for a new azalea and go off to the nursery to buy one, only to run into a wall. In the evening, you stare at the TV with your husband. You watch a new sitcom about madcap young people living on the space station. They talk about sex nonstop, but never actually do it. Neither of you laugh. The late news comes on. The anchorman puts on his most somber face and informs you that a man was cut in half when a wall landed on top of him. They do not show pictures. The anchorman says this is not the first time people have been hurt by the walls. His words imply a government cover-up. He seems more concerned about this than about people being hurt by the walls. They run a clip of the president expressing compassion for the victim's family and promising to appoint a government commission to study the walls. Your husband starts to snore, and you take this as notice of bedtime. At 3 a.m., you wake up gasping for breath, as if you've been running at hours for full speed. You lie there looking at the familiar furniture, listening for the TV. You hear nothing. Maybe the power is off. But no, the clock radio changes from 3:07 to 3:08. You try to calm your heartbeat so you can hear over it. Listen again. Nothing. You're scared to move, but you get up anyway, put on your robe and house shoes, and pad down the hall and hit the wall. It runs down the middle of the house, cutting the bedrooms off from the living room and kitchen. You sigh, regretting the kitchen, but at least you have the bathroom, which you use now before going back to bed where you don't sleep anymore. In the morning, you climb out the bedroom window. One wall skewers your property in half. Another cuts through your next door neighbor's house. The street is blocked on both sides. The only way out is through yards. It doesn't look like you can get very far that way. You knock on the neighbor's door. No answer. They were probably in bed when it happened. Then you remember that the houses are the same. Their kitchen must be on this side. You break a window and climb in, find coffee and cereal. The neighbor is a handy type, always fixing something. You get his drill, sort through the bits, find the ones for concrete, run an extension cord, and start in on the wall. It takes longer than you expect to even make a dent. By mid-afternoon, you have blunted all the concrete bits and made a dent 3 inches deep. You try the wood bits and make no progress at all. You go back to your bedroom, taking food and tools. At 3 a.m., you wake up trying to scream, but cannot make a sound. The room is completely dark. You know without looking that the wall is right outside the bedroom window. You climb shakily out of bed, thinking vaguely of a drink of water, but you run full tilt into the other wall. It's between you and the door. You back away slowly, bump into the bed, and collapse back on it. But this is not the time to give up. You take the pickaxe you stole from your neighbor and begin to strike the closet floor. The wood gives easily, and soon you have a hole, exposing another layer of wood. You hack at that until you can see the ground, and thank God the house was not built on a concrete slab. Once the hole is big enough, you take a shovel and dig. First, you toss the dirt into the crawl space, but it fills up, so you start piling it on the bedroom floor. By daybreak, you can stand in the hole up to your shoulders. It's almost as wide as the closet. You eat a peanut butter sandwich, admire your work. It's time to start the tunnel sideways. You dig like a woman possessed. Now you forgive your husband his laziness. If you hadn't spent all that time doing yard work, you'd never have been strong enough to dig this tunnel. You dig it wide and deep enough so you can crawl along on your hands and knees. After a few feet, you can no longer use the shovel. You crawl inside and use a trowel. Going is slower now. You take a break and eat the rest of the peanut butter. You figure you must almost be to the edge of the house. You'll be under the wall soon, and you start getting excited about what might lie on the other side. Will the neighbors be there, house back together? Will you have to explain about the food and the tools? You start digging faster and faster, and then clunk, you've hit a rock. You pull back and do what you always do when digging in the garden. Dig a little farther away. Clunk. Slowly it seeps in. You haven't hit a rock. You've hit the wall. After a while, you get tired of crying and just quit. You wipe a dirty forearm across your face, blow your nose on your pajama top, and crawl back out of the hole. You open a can of tuna fish. Nourished once more, you climb back into the hole. You know you'll never get around the wall. No, it goes too deep to dig under. You start digging. And that's it.
Wow, lovely work. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Nancy Jane Moore, everybody. And also Kathleen Jennings. I want to thank you both for a really wonderful story hour program. Laura, we are so lucky.
I think we may be the luckiest people.
We are the luckiest people indeed. Speaking of which, next week, we're very excited to have Carly St. George and P.L. McMillan. So we will hopefully see you all back here then. I want to thank our authors tonight, Kathleen Jennings, Nancy Jane Moore,
Thank you.
co-host Laura Blackwell, and all of you for coming back every week. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.
good
Thank you
night.
so much. Bye.
Thank you all.